All right, guys. Well, hey, Mikey, all good news. And I just was saying this before we hopped on, Ryan, that like the best week in the entire year is this week. This is the week where people start making decisions that they should have made and they want to make going into 2026. One of those is life insurance, where people are like, man, I just want to make sure I've got the peace of mind. They delayed it, they put it off. And so, all of you that are calling leads, any kind of lead, even the older leads, this is a great opportunity to say, hey, most families are wrapping up their year. They want to make sure that they have their priorities in alignment as they step into the next year. And one of those is their family, making sure they've got that peace of mind. Does that sound like you as well? And just going into it and calling these families, they're thinking about it. This is a great time. A year we should see the best week should be this week as we wrap up, and I believe it will be. And so, well, guys, listen, I think about this quite a bit. Anytime there's a national call, anytime there's a podcast, anytime there's something that's going to be consumed by the sales force, I'm very intentional with sitting back and saying, who do I believe can bring some great value to you? I believe that this is the best team that's in this space. I believe that there's no team in this IMO world that is set up and poised to have the growth that we're set up and poised to have. That's a testament to all of you guys. A company's growth is really just a reflection of the people's growth. And I love what Mikey, what you just went through, because that leaderboard, when somebody has their first 5K, their first 10K, their biggest submit, like that's a fulfilling week, right, Ryan? Like the progression is fulfilling, right? Like for me, I found that, at a whether that's
You
chasing
should
a
be on
trophy
mute.
or chasing a title or chasing whatever, that those things are very fleeting. But what fulfills is when you're giving and when you're growing, right? When I'm growing and I'm developing and I see myself, maturing, developing better values, better character, better skill set, better mindset. When I feel myself growing, I usually feel the most fulfilled. And I don't care if I've thought when I hit this goal, man, that's going to be the ticket. That's when I'm going to be so happy and blissful. That's not true, because if I hit that and I start going backwards or I stay the same, I start losing the fulfillment. And then giving, being able to give and take what I've learned and earned and return it to those that are coming behind me, and be able to serve them and give them vision and give them encouragement and give them, some highlights to the blind spots that they might have. Like that's so fulfilling. It's giving and growing. And as we wrap up this year, Ryan, we've got 2025 that's slowly going to be left behind us, and we're going to be very quickly stepping into 2026. With that said, I believe that those that set themselves up to have the best year yet, they first spend a little bit of time reflecting upon the year that's coming to a close, and they really plunder that year. Okay. And just to give some context to set the stage, and then I want you to dive into this, Ryan. But like you look at the story in Exodus where the Egyptians had these Israelites in bondage for 400 years, right? And the Egyptians, the Israelites are now leaving bondage. They're getting ready to step into their next year, their next promised land. And before they leave, though, they don't just leave, they plunder the Egyptians before they leave. So, what does that mean? It means that they stepped into the next gap towards their next level. They stepped into that dripping, right? So my 18-year-olds or my 13 like, Dad, that person was dripping, right? Like they stepped into that dripping. Like they took and plundered all their gold, all their like they plundered the Egyptians, and then they stepped into the next gap on their way to their next level. I believe it's the same thing. Like 2025, don't just leave it, man. Like you want to go into 2026 dripping because you plundered 2025. So let's kind of
What
start
happened?
there.
What do you have like new legs?
And we're going to go
No,
through this
I hurt
process.
my head.
If you guys can mute as I talk, Ash, if you could just find whoever's talking and mute them. It could be in a kind way or not a kind way. I'm indifferent on that. But we're going to start here, and then we're going to go from here. We're going to go through how to plan, and then really how to set up some really good, anchors to ensure that you don't move from it. And so I believe this call is going to bring you great value. But let's start here, Ryan. Talk about like how does somebody plunder their 2025? How do they reflect the right way? Questions they can ask. What do you do? How do you set yourself up? And let me just say this, Ryan. when we spoke, we did a podcast a couple weeks ago. By the way, if you guys haven't seen it, I highly suggest you go back and watch the podcast. Ryan, it was a masterclass you gave on mindset, psychology of the sales. I've been doing this a long time, and it's one of the best I've heard. And you said something to me, which I think most people say. Most people say like, "Oh, I'm committed. I'm going to start recruiting. I'm going to start building. I'm not going to mess around. I could take it to the next level." And I kind of like it's like, okay, well, you're supposed to say that, like
Mhm.
like of course. But then some people say it, and like you're like, I don't think they're playing around. Like I think they're telling the truth. And when you said it, dude, like I had this like my heart kind of moved. Like I think he's 100% telling the truth. Like he's committed to this, and which is why I wanted you to get on here because I believe that some of these things you're going to be doing. I think you're going to 10x your business in 2026, bro. And I think there's a lot of people on here that have that same goal. And I believe there's a lot of people on here that can do that. But kind of talk about that. How does somebody reflect the right way?
Yeah, for sure. I think the best piece of advice I've gotten in the last few years, Paul, was somebody who was an agent that, to be honest, wasn't a very successful agent, no longer in the industry. But I try to make it a point to learn something from everybody that I rub shoulders with. And he was going through our new agent training process, and basically he made a remark that, like, oh, this part of the training process wasn't very good. Like I didn't learn a lot from that. And I still really struggled with this coming out of the training process. And I told him, I was like, well, that's how it's always been, like everybody else is fine. And he was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe if other people are struggling with it, it should get fixed. So I was like, you know what? I can be a little bit humble here, Paul. I asked a couple other people that have recently been through it, and they all said the same thing. Hey, we struggled with the same thing. And he pointed that out to me. It really wasn't even a piece of advice, but kind of what I learned from that is when oftentimes in our businesses we have common problems. Okay. And most people look at problems, friction, they look at failure in a negative way, and they'll say, man, that stinks that happened. But that's all that they say, is they're just regretful that they didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. Or when you throw out a rebuttal to an objection and it doesn't work, we're just like, oh, well, it didn't work. But then there's a next level of people, Paul, that takes what went wrong. They look at the friction, they look at the problems that they had as solutions. They're like, I had a problem. Great. How do I solve it? Instead of, oh no, I had a problem. Let me run away. And that's the biggest piece that you guys can take into the new year is take some time. Nobody likes to do this, but take some time and ruminate on what went wrong. Write down why it went wrong. Why did you fail? What happened? What caused you to fail? And half of solving the problem is identifying it. And if you can write down what went wrong, why it went wrong, what you think happened, you're now 50% of the way to making sure that you have the opposite effect in 2026. And I think for me that's the first thing that I do at the end of every year is I look back and I say, what went wrong? I do the same thing with my sales process, by the way. Hey, what went wrong on that call? Where did I lose them? Where was there friction? What do I want to improve on it? As opposed to looking at friction and looking at problems as a bad thing, to me, problems give me purpose, Paul. It gives me something to solve and it tells me what to work on. It tells me what direction to head next. When there's a problem, I know what path to go down, right? But when there's no problems, if we're not breaking anything, I'm scared. If I feel like I'm ever in a spot in my life or my business where nothing's going wrong and everything's perfect, to be honest, I'm low key freaking out because I'm like, dude, like, this is weird. Like, what in the world? I don't know what to do with this. But when you have those problems, when you have those issues, that tells you and it illuminates what to solve. And I think, in business, breaking things is great. It's an amazing thing because if you break something, you know what to fix. And that means what you're doing is working. And I think we have to look at it like that. So that's the first thing that I would say is just looking back on the year, taking some time to write down what went wrong, why it went wrong, potential solutions, reach out to somebody who has solved it before and get some advice on it. Shout out to Jordan Lowry. Jordan, I used to listen to you all the time back in the day. You're an absolute dog. Look forward to seeing what you do. But he used to say something. You should have you called it 3 by 3 by 3, right? You should have three people in your life that you're looking up to that you want to become, three people that are ahead of you, three people that are contemporaries, people that are on the same level as you that you're pushing with. You're all on the same level and you're encouraging each other to grow. And then three people that are, a little bit behind you in your career and you're trying to help to get to where you're at. And that's been really impactful for me. Like, who are those three people that I would like to become? And always asking them, hey, how did you solve this problem that I'm currently dealing with?
That's so good. I want to pause it and remind you guys that this needs to be an interactive like master class. And so like this is practical. So like a lot of the things that you'll hear oftentimes is like, okay, that makes sense. Yes, it does make sense, but we want to be not just taking notes, but making notes. This is one of those very interactive, like, okay, so Ryan just said the 333. You got to write it down. Who is my 333? Who should they be? Right. Like another question is like, who did I spend time with last year that
Mm.
it was just wasted time? Like it didn't helped me become a better version of myself. It didn't move the needle with my faith, with my fitness, with my family, with my finances, with my business. Like nothing about the areas of my life that matter most really got better with that time. It was actually wasted time. And then who in your life last year that when you spent time with them, man, it was time well spent. Like you left with vision, you left with purpose, you left with identity. Like you were like, this was good. Like this was fruit. This was healthy. This helped me level up. Who was those? Who was it? One, two, top three? Who the top three? And then what are you going to do this year to ensure you have more time spent with them? It's those questions that produce a better thought, and that better thought empowers you to take a higher level action, and that action will shift and change and lead you to the result that you desire, i.e., your goal, right? So maybe the overall thought is like, man, I'm going to see if I can schedule to fly on the flight from with them from you know this event to this event. I'm going to see what their flight schedule is in 2026, and you reach out and like, hey, what's your flight schedule? Well, man, I'm actually flying from New Jersey to Tampa on this day. Well, man, do you mind if I fly with you, or do you mind if I grab some lunch? So now you're thinking, and you normally would have never done it. You might have known it, but you never would have done it. But now you're like you're getting back to the fact like, okay, this is I'm aware of it now. I've defined who I get the most value from, who feeds me. I've defined that. Now, what do I need to do to enhance that and get more of that? And then that leads you to an action that produces the result. So, but I just want to say, guys, like this has got to be interactive. I want this to be almost a playbook and a framework for you to leave and put this into place. Maybe that's late tonight, early tomorrow morning, sometime that you spend some time doing this. And so, what are some other questions, Ryan and Mike, if you've got any questions as well that you like to ask yourself as you're going through and reflecting upon 2025 that really kind of allows you to be fully aware of what to do, what not to do as you step into 2026?
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned that's powerful is like who or what were you around that was holding you back? And I think that you got to make those changes, right? There's going to be people every year. I'm not saying to cut, super close people or family out of your life, but there's people in your life that, you got to keep them at a distance. You can't be around them every day. I read a book one time, one of the most impactful books I've ever read, Paul. It's called 2 Second Lean. The entire idea of the book is you should make an improvement every day that saves you 2 seconds. So, let's say something silly like you keep your keys in a locked drawer, right? So the next day, instead of locking the drawer, you leave it unlocked. So it takes you 2 seconds less to get out the door to work. And if you make an improvement every day of your life that saves you 2 seconds, you could have a task that took you several hours to do and then, shrink it down to just a few minutes over the course of a little bit of time, just a couple of months. And just applying that principle to every area and every aspect of my life. Allison, it's called 2 Second Lean, but applying that principle to every aspect of my life. I need to make a small improvement today. That's it. One small improvement that saves me some time. One small improvement that helps me become a little bit better. I need to spend a little bit less time with this person, a little bit more time with that person, a little bit less time on the Xbox, a little bit more time on the phones, right? Like one thing every day. I've heard so many people say it, especially recently, but most people underestimate what they can do in a year, or they overestimate what they can do in a year and way underestimate what they can do in 5 years. And that's that principle of 2 second lean, just making a small change. That's what really compounds your growth over time. And that's for me, that's how I developed my sales process, was that principle of 2 second lean. What can I cut out? What do I need to add? How do I make it a little bit better every single day? And when you do that over time, my first year in the industry, Paul, it took me probably 70, 80 hours a week to write 300,000 in an issue paid business. But fast forward to last calendar year, I stopped writing business in July. and I hit 400,000. And I did that on like 20 hours a week, January through July. And, so if, you go forward 3, 4 years with that idea, that principle, that philosophy of 2 second lean, just always get a little bit better every day, a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And the impact is just monumental. And so look for those things that are holding you back. For me, one of those things in my personal life is the gym, right? Like I feel like one of the excuses that I use to not go to the gym is, oh, well, it's a 20-minute drive to the gym, 20 drive minute back. That's 40, 45 minutes in the morning that I'm wasting. So I'm going to cut that excuse out. I'm going to get a home gym. I'm going to put it in my house. So I don't have that excuse anymore. So I can't tell myself that I can't go to the gym. So I'm cutting that excuse out. And that's one of those 2 second lean things that I'm going to implement going forward into this year to help my year out, if that makes sense.
Dude, I absolutely love that. I mean, it's so good. Mike, you have something to add to that?
I love it, dude. Forget 2 seconds, dude. You 1,000 exit, bro. 20 minutes. Here we go. That's Ryan Koske. That's how he does.
Yeah.
I mean, so powerful. Like, Mikey, like if you would have, you got to watch the podcast with Ryan when we went through the psychology of the sale, because I'm not surprised that you're that intentional with inspecting your sales process and saying where was it off? Where could it have gotten better? Where was it broken? What lesson have I learned in my sales presentation from all the experiences that I've had over the past year? And then really kind of spending some time doing that work. It doesn't take a lot of time. This is one of those things that really kind of like highlight that success cliche you've heard, which is like success is found in that little bit extra, right? It really is. It's like that little bit extra. Like most do all the things, but they do not really inspect and analyze and break apart and re-put together their sales presentation. It takes a little bit more effort, but then all of a sudden you start to understand like, oh, this is, man, I didn't know, but like I say this for this reason. And that's why I've been doing it with the wrong tone, is because I was saying it, not understanding that this is why I need it. Like, so you only get that by like spending time really kind of thinking and focusing on it. Like I've always said, this business is a thinking person's business. It's very difficult to become great by just default. You got to think. You got to inspect. You got to analyze. You got to interrogate the reality that you're sitting in order to be able to unpack those things, and then you can make those fine adjustments and get a little better. And so I love that, Ryan, because to me, when you say that, it's like, okay, makes sense given the ability for you to articulate your sales process and that psychology. You spent some time, dude, inspecting this thing. Yes, you've done the experience, but you've evaluated the experience. And an evaluated experience breeds insight. Insight leads you to a higher thought process. Higher thought process leads you to a higher level. And so that's the thing. Most people think, I'll just get more experience. No, 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 no. Experience in its own right isn't the best teacher. It's evaluated experience. Are you evaluating your experience? And so I absolutely love the fact that you do that. What are some other things that you think are worthy for somebody? Obviously we're all a lot more alike on this call than we are not alike. We're in this business, we're helping families, we're recruiting, building agencies, like we're all doing the same thing. What is what are some other things that people should be analyzing, inspecting, interrogating about their business as they look at 2025?
Yeah, I think I think the number one thing is like how much did you profit, right? Because nobody's in this to work. Nobody, right? Nobody's in it to show up and, smile at Paul and Mikey and myself up here on a call and listen to us wax eloquent for, 30 minutes or so here, right? Like you got to be making money. And that's something that I didn't pay attention to year one, right? I just worked. And I think that that's part of what allowed me to have a lot of really early success, and it kind of set the foundation. So what I would say is your first 90 days needs to be all out, not paying attention to not paying crazy close attention to profit and over analyzing it. But once you've got past that first 100 appointments and you really know what you're doing and you can kind of predict your success and what's going to happen next week, next month, next year, then you've got to look back and see, okay, cool. Why didn't I make as much money as I wanted? Right. And newsflash, guys, it's typically not leads, right? Everybody's like, well, if I can cut my lead costs by 10%, I can save X amount of money on the year. It's generally not leads. I heard a saying one time, and it's been really impactful for me. But you can be penny rich and dollar poor. So what that means is if I pick up 100 pennies if I pick up $1, that's the same amount of money, but I'm gonna have a backache after I pick up 100 pennies, right? And most of us, we spend our lives looking for these cheap little things to save money, where we're cutting coupons. We're looking for ways to save money as opposed to how do I make more money? Bro, Paul, when I put my mind around the idea that it is so much easier to make $10,000 than it is to save $10,000 on what I'm currently making, bro, it's like a cheat code to making money. Because like I don't look at it the same. I'm not advocating for being irresponsible and spending all your money. Absolutely not. But get out of that idea of how do I save money? Scared money don't make money, bro. You've got to go invest in yourself. You might need to invest in yourself, physically, spiritually, mentally, financially. Invest in yourself to see that next level of result. And I think oftentimes when I say let's look back and see why we aren't profitable, the only thing people think about is leads, right? Because that's our biggest expense. But it can be your schedule, it can be your character, it can be your sales process, it can be the people that you're around, your environment. There's so many things that it can be on top of, all the, accounting and things like that. Like there's so many other things that it can be, but just paying attention to that profit, what really stood in the way, being honest with yourself about it, because most of us are not honest with ourselves, right? We're going to blame something external when there was not a single day, not a single week this year where you woke up at the same exact time and started dialing at the same exact time. There was not a single week where you made the same exact amount of dials and you talked to the same exact amount of people. There was not a single week this year where you booked the same amount of appointments, had the same amount of anything. But oh, it's not my fault. It's got to be something else. And I think that that's the biggest thing, just being incredibly honest with yourself. Look at yourself as an employee. If this dude was working for me, would I want to fire him or would I want 10 more of him? Right. And I think for most of us on this call, you're like, okay, maybe I wouldn't fire the guy, but I wouldn't want more of him. That's for sure. Be the person that you would want more of. I think we give ourselves way too much. We're kind of in an era, in an age of like, oh, you crossed my boundaries. Don't do this, don't do that. But like, we need to kind of like dispel that a little bit and take complete personal responsibility for everything in our lives, extreme accountability, extreme ownership, right? Where it's nobody else's fault. It's literally only my fault. And that's a beautiful thing because Paul, if it's my problem, I can fix it. But if I'm not the problem, Paul, I can't fix that problem. And so just being honest about, what held you back gives you the path that you need to go down to be able to fix that problem.
So good, dude. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's so true, and most people, there's this rub. Like most people will say that they've got the same goals. Like it's like they want to go out and be a President's Circle member. They want to go out and build a massive business. They want financial freedom, but when it comes down to it, they're not willing to do the things and get uncomfortable and sacrifice in order to get that, right? And that's one of those things where you got to be really aware of that. Like, do I really want this? Am I really committed to it? And then that's reflected in your language. Are you saying it's the leads? Are you saying it's this? Because that's saying that you really don't want to do the hard work, the dirty work, look in the mirror and identify the things that you really can control, which is your attitude, your activity, and your association. Those are typically the three things that you want to develop and get better in 2026. Can my attitude, the way I think and feel about myself and others, can that get better? My activity, can it be more efficient, more diligent, more prioritized in 2026? My association, can I spend more time with people that are bigger thinkers than me, that are going to help expand and bring out that seed of greatness that's in me that maybe was just harbored last year and then really didn't get the sunlight? Can I get around those type of people? But Ryan, as you're talking, it makes me think about like my daughter, dude. So my 13-year-old got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when she was 11. And, what the doctors want to say is like, it just happens. We can't explain it. It just happens. It is what it is. There's people that are really healthy. They don't do nothing. They get it. And it could be this. Like, it was like as if like no responsibility, no responsibility. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, what if we caught, like, what if we did certain things as parents? Maybe it was unknowing and unaware, but that her body created this. Because if her body created this, then her body can get rid of this. And so we really took that approach, which was like, I'm going to take ownership that my daughter's body created this. And there was things that we could do to help her body get rid of it, and things that we probably shouldn't have done. And if we were aware of, that we wouldn't have done, and maybe would have prevented it. Like we took that, and it was difficult, dude. It was a very hard thing for me to say. I think I played a part in possibly having this happen to my 11-year-old daughter. That was very difficult, but it was very necessary. That's where we started to do hyperbaric chambers and real life therapy beds and change our whole water systems and nutrients and no ceto. I mean, like we went and figured out like, oh yeah, this can absolutely be created. Now, I don't know if we did or didn't do it, if we changed it all, if that would make a difference, but I don't know. But I do know that ownership was the first thing for us to progress and get better. I do know it definitely made us better. I definitely know that it helped us enhance and improve, and we got way healthier because of that. And so I just think that is the first thing. It does suck. It is difficult. It is hard, but you have to take ownership. And just because you don't like what you're looking at, that doesn't mean that you're a failure because you had a failed year. That's just the year that you had. You can tweak and adjust, but it takes ownership to make sure you don't have that same year again in 2026. That's true failure, is that you didn't learn from it. Failure gives you the ability to begin again more intelligently. You're getting ready to start 2026, a new year. Are you going to do it more intelligently because you're reflecting upon 2025 and you're going to take everything from it? I do believe standards are important. I want to kind of go into this really quick, and then I think we're going to go ahead and get into a place where it's really going to provide great value. Not that it already hasn't, because it has. I've taken a ton of notes, and I hope this is providing great value for everybody. Standards. What are some of the standards and non-negotiables that, Ryan, that you're committed to making, that you believe are most important for top producers, top builders to make? You've been a President Circle member, before. You've done well over 400,000 or 500,000 paid business. Your team's doing several 100,000, 400,000 a month in this paid business. I believe you can 10x this going into next year. You know that I believe that. We've had conversations about that. I hope that you believe that. I think you are starting to believe that. But what are some of the standards that you've got to put in place in order to make sure that you don't get moved by feelings or by emotions? It's like, no, I'm not moved by an emotion. I'm moved by my standard. Like,
Yeah.
what are some of those for you?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to, okay, everybody drop an emoji, a W, something in the chat if it would be helpful if you could predict exactly how much money you're going to make next week, next month. Drop an emoji, drop something in the chat. If you're like, dude, honestly, this job would be so much fun if I knew exactly what was going to happen tomorrow. If I could show up and knew what was going to happen, I would go through 12, 14-hour dial days. Bro, I'd be dialing in the mud, in the heat, no AC, give me whatever if I could predict it. Okay, so we all feel the same. I felt the same way for a very long time. And the most frustrating thing was feeling like I was showing up and really working hard, but not knowing what was going to happen at the end of the day or at the end of the week. And I waited way too long, guys, to get completely sick, tired, and freaking pissed off with myself for letting myself stay in that position for so long, where I was torturing myself mentally. You guys know you don't have to stay there, okay? You don't have to let yourself keep being worried and stressed out and in that financial strain where you have to make a sale, but I need to emotionally disconnect from the sale, right? Like, you don't have to stay there. So I want to give you guys the 5 steps to being able to predict your success and predict what the week is going to look like next week, and ultimately, obviously, what the entirety of 2026 is going to be. And what it starts with is, it starts with 60 days of consistency. You have to be consistent for 60 days. Now, some of you guys have been consistent for the last 60 days. Some of you guys are new, so you're going to have to take January, February, be consistent. And some of you guys, you've been around a while, but you've literally never been consistent. So you got to start today. And by the way, if you're ever going to do anything and you're going to say, well, I'm going to start tomorrow or next week or January, bro, don't start January 1st. Okay. New Year's resolutions, they're a complete joke, because if it was serious, you would do it now, right? There's no New Year's resolutions. You're going to do it now or you're not going to ever do it. Okay. So don't wait till next week, till January 1st to start something like this. But you've got to be consistent in 60 days. And here's the 4 areas where you have to be consistent. Number 1, your schedule. You got to be consistent with your schedule. Wake up at the same time, start dialing at the same time, eat lunch at the same time, eat dinner at the same time. Number 2, your workflow. You've got to make the same amount of dials. You've got to book the same amount of appointments. You've got to give the same amount of presentations. Number 3 is your leads. Guys, if your lead flow is not consistent, your production will never, ever, ever be consistent. The lead flow is what creates that. So you've got to have the same amount of leads every single week. And if you can be consistent in those 4 areas, the last one is your sales process. You've got to have a consistent sales process where you just say the same things over and over and over again. Okay. So that's step one, is consistency for 60 days. Step two, guys, is tracking your numbers. So during that 60 days, you need to know every day, how many dials did I make? How many people did I talk to? How many appointments did I book? How many presentations did I give? How much in premiums did I write? How much did I issue pay? And how much did I deposit? And what did I spend on leads? Like, you've got to know all of those things. And when you have 60 days of data, you can look back at. Congratulations, Paul. You can now go and predict what future Paul is going to achieve based on what past Paul has done. But you've got to be consistent in those 4 areas for at least 60 days to be able to have some proof. Now, some of you guys that have been around a little longer, you might only need 2 weeks or 4 weeks. Some of you guys who are a little bit newer, it's going to have to be 60 days, but it's at least 60 days that you're going to have to do this. So you're going to track your numbers, and you're going to figure out, guys, how much in premiums you submit per dial, per contact, per appointment, and presentation. Okay. Whatever metric you want to track. When I was writing business, full time all the time, when I had 3-4 years in a row where we hit President's Club, my number was appointments. Okay. And I made somewhere roughly $353 per appointment that I booked, regardless, Paul, of whether they showed up, whether they forgot about it, whether they showed up and it was an 80-year-old, 85-year-old dementia-ridden grandma who I couldn't help get any insurance. It didn't matter what happened. If I sold it or if I didn't sell it, one appointment was worth $353 to me. That's it. Okay. And that was my number. And the way you get that is you take your average appointments over those 60 days, or your average dials, or your average presentations, whatever metric you want to track, divided by, you take average AP divided by whatever metric you want to use. And then for me, that came out to 353 appointments. So Paul, my goal was to do 40,000 every single month. And so when I did the math, it was pretty simple. I just needed to run 120 appointments a month to write that 40,000. So that was my non-negotiable, Paul. Okay. Now, a lot of people mistake a non-negotiable with a goal. A non-negotiable is not a goal. A non-negotiable is, this is what I'm going to do no matter what. It doesn't matter how sick I feel, how terrible the week was, how bad my bank account looks. It doesn't matter what's going on in my personal life or in my business. I am going to hit this number. And I knew for a fact that if I just ran 35 appointments every single week, I'm going to write 13,000 in premiums every single freaking week. And you know how easy it is? You know how easy it is when you can predict it like that, to show up and dial the phones and get cussed out all day? Bro, it's so freaking easy. The problem is you don't know what's going to happen when you dial. And that's why it is torturous for you. For me, it's fun. I like hanging up on people. I like listening to people cuss at me, because I know, dude, if I called you, Paul, and you cussed me out, I just made $27.25 and had a good laugh. Bro, I'll take that all day. Cuss me out for $27. I don't care how many people, how many people can we line up? How many people can step into my office or be on the other side of the line? And that's how you have to look at it. So once you track your numbers, you're then going to set your goal. Okay, I want to do 40,000 and figure out so step 3 is set your goal. Step 4 is find out what inputs you need to hit your goal. So that's where we were saying, take your average AP divided by average appointments, presentations, closes, whatever number it is that you want to track. I prefer things I can control. So appointments and dials or presentations, one of those 3, appointments booked, total dials, total presentations, or maybe total contacts. Any one of those metrics you can use as your non-negotiable. Figure out what inputs you need to hit your goal, and then set that as your non-negotiable, where that's what I'm going to achieve no matter what. And if you guys are able to do that, you'll be able to predict exactly what your success is going to look like. I remember the first year that I did this, it was the first year that I hit President's Club, and it was, honestly, dude, it was so freeing. It was so freeing, because I used to stress out all day, all week. I literally used to work 70, 80 hours a week to try to hit 5K. But dude, that first year that I hit President's Club, Paul, dude, I spent more time on the golf course than I'd ever spent doing anything in a single year in my entire life. And I wrote a bunch of business. Now I golf a lot less because I'm a little bit more serious about growing the agency. But when you can do that, it just provides so much sanity, so much mental clarity. When I know, hey, when I wake up, all I've got to do today is book 20 appointments, and then I'm done. Then I don't have to dial until Thursday. And then Thursday, I'm going to get up and I'm going to book 20 appointments. And if we can all do that, it's going to be such an easy year for us. The problem is, some of you guys are going to hear this on a call and you're not going to implement it, right? The scriptures tell us that there's foolish people and there's wise people. We'd call them stupid people and smart people, right? And you hear the saying all the time, knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't power. We live in a day and age where knowledge is so easy to come by with all the different avenues that you can learn. Everybody knows everything or can learn anything. But the difference is, how fast are you going to apply the knowledge, the newfound knowledge that you have? How fast are you going to go out and let it impact and implement it and let it change your life? Or are you going to be the person who leaves a call like this? Because this can literally change your guys' life, your personal life, your professional life, financially, spiritually, mentally. Like, it can change everything for you. Some of you guys are going to go out, you're going to implement this, and some of you guys are going to think you're so smart and you're not going to do anything. And the scriptures call you a fool, right? Because you're not doing anything, you're not going to implement it. And this, Paul, I think that this is the biggest thing for me that I've ever done. Really, this is life in general, but specifically for my personal production, that's just made it so easy to write a lot of business.
Man, so good. I mean, there's so many notes there. Like, finding the place and time where you can have that ratio realization is what I used to call, like, where you realize your ratio. Like that's where you can start to reverse engineer and you could predict it. Because how many people know, like, I don't know if you're like I was when I got started, my aunt's like, why don't you just get a real job? Like, commissions is up and down and highs and lows. And I was like, man, I like roller coasters, but I don't like them financially. I don't want one of those. But when I realized is that once I identified my ratio, which was easy, looking at the stats once you've got the consistency and schedule, dude, I could call out what I was going to make each week. And if it was off one week, it would make up for it the next week. Like, you never have a bad month. Like, dude, I did never had a bad month. I remember they had this thing a while back, was like, Mr. K, it was like the consistency challenge. And I went like 119 weeks in a row, not issue paying less than 5,000 every week. Some had, would do 20 grand one week and 2 grand the next week, and then, 17 and then zero. Like, my deal was like, I just loved emotional stability. Like, I just loved going to my job, right? Like, as an employer, you set up your schedule for 2026. So this is kind of like the employer hat that we're talking about today. Everybody's got to be the employer this week. Employers go back and they analyze their business. They analyze the employees. They analyze they inspect what was going on. The employer plans the next year. This is the schedule. This is what we need to do. This is where we need to invest. This is where we should place our funds. This is where our priorities are. This is where our resources are. The employer does that. The employee has to execute. That's the self-employed. You're both the employer, but you're also the employee. You're both when you're self-employed. Sometimes we try to play just the employer, all these plans and strategize, and we know what's wrong, but because we don't execute as the employee, we go out of business. And then sometimes just so focused on being the employee, we don't pause and say, well, dude, what am I doing here? Like, I've got the ratio already. I'm pretending like it's not real. I'm not looking at it. And if I don't see it, then it doesn't do anything for me. Like, or you're not pausing and asking yourself pointed questions to get everything from. You're both. You're the employer and the employee. But having that ratio realization. And then the thing I wanted to highlight, Koske, you said, is like, these non-negotiables are not a goal. They're activity goals. It's not the result goal. It's not 500K in issue paid business this year. It's, what is the number one thing, the standard that I must have, the standards I must have to ensure that I hit that. Those are the non-negotiables. That's going to be activity based. But the non-negotiables, what it does is it allows you to pull away emotion from a decision, and it allows you to leave a feeling of like, well, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing that. You there's no question. It's like, no, this is what I do. This is what I do. So what it does is it allows you to free up a bunch of emotional capacity also to be hyper focused and executing when you make it a true non-negotiable. When you just say, oh, I know I need to invest $2,000 a week in leads. Oh, I know I need to plug into the office. Oh, I know I need to. Maybe I shouldn't move. Everybody's situation is different, but heard a lot of people that are like, man, I'm young. It's just me. Maybe I should move to a different city and get around the heat. And like, what could that do? What if that 1 year, like 1 year of pain, of getting uncomfortable, of changing locations and uprooting, all that is difficult. But what if that 1 year led you to 50, 60 years of financial freedom because that was the one thing, right? Like, a non-negotiable, it pulls away all the emotion. Now it's just, this is what I do. And now you just focus on executing your motions there. You're going to get such a better result. Too often in our mind, it's not a non-negotiable. It's just what we know we need to do. I know I need to. So then we're battling. Okay, it's Monday. I know I need to invest 2 grand in leads, but well, maybe after I write 10K this week, then I'll increase it. Or actually this week it's Billy's birthday. Billy, my neighbor's son, it's his birthday on in 12 o'clock. So I don't need as many leads because I'm going to be tied up from 12 to 2 on when. Like you start going back and negotiating with yourself, and when you're negotiating against yourself, even in the court of law, man, it's taxing. It's difficult. It's a bad position to be in. So now you're negotiating with yourself, opposed to saying, "Oh no, it's what I do. It's not negotiable." Now you don't have like Parkinson's. People have Parkinson's when they're getting ready to click the lead button to buy. Like they're like, oh my God, and they start shaking. It's like that goes away because like this is what I got to do. I just got to do it. So you don't think about it, you just do it because it's a standard. Now at the end of the day, when you could say, man, I feel really good, not because maybe I didn't hit my goal for the day. Maybe your goal for the day was 3,000, right? But you didn't hit it, but you executed your standards and non-negotiable. You feel good about that. Get your self-esteem from your activity goals, not your result goals. If you get your self-esteem from your activity goals, your standards, eventually your result goals will inevitably show up because it's just a matter of time. Now, when you tell yourself the story, if it hasn't showed up, instead of saying, man, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe I've been lucky. Maybe I've just been lucky the last, couple of years. Maybe my luck's right now. Instead of you starting to come up with dumb narratives, which I mean, that I was talking about, so that's what I did. But now it's like, oh no. Oh, I'm about to hit big tomorrow because numbers don't lie. I reverse engineered it. I'm about to smoke it tomorrow because today I hit my non-negotiables, but the result didn't show up. So I'm due. I'm due now, baby. Like it's due to hit tomorrow. So now you go in with a heightened expectation, not a lower expectation, thinking like, man, maybe this is gonna work. Because that's how you mess up your ratio, is if your attitude shifts. If you start telling yourself a different story about the situation. Make sure the story you're telling yourself as you enter 2026 is a story that lines up with the success you desire, not the failure. Meaning that if you're telling yourself a story of like, man, these leads just don't work out. The question is, does that story line up with success or failure? Well, failure. Well, then delete it. Like take it captive, remove it, right? Meditate on the right story of like, this is a client, they asked for help, they desperately need this. If they don't come home tomorrow, they're gonna be homeless. I'm the person that's called to help them. Tell yourself that story. This client's desperately wanting to talk to me. Man, they're so privileged that they get to talk to me because I've got a heart to serve. I touch a heart before I ask for a hand. I'm gonna connect with them, I'm gonna value them, I'm gonna challenge them, you start telling yourself the right story. So I mean, I absolutely love everything you're talking about, Ryan. Mikey, if you can, I think this ties in really well with what Koski's talking about with, obviously the reflection. We talked about questions you ask yourself, inspecting 2025, talk about 2026, setting in some goals. I think most people on here know what goals they want. I think that's pretty easy. Like, what is your team going to be doing in January? What is your team going to be doing in March? What is your team? How many people are going to the national convention? That's a very important goal to have. And you make it a non-negotiable in reverse engineer. Well, if I want to get this many people there, how many should I invite? How many do I need to invite a day? How many people on my team are inviting people that they know? How do I get them to invite people on their team? Maybe I should do a call. Maybe I should do a competition. You just start thinking about it. But you know your goals, you reverse engineer it. Now it comes to commitment. Mikey, talk about the commitment, how you used to write it out, spell it out, and kind of sign your name to it. Because I've done this. In fact, I found mine, Mikey, when I was reviewing last week that I wrote like back in 2015, dude. And I had a commitment to where I was going to be at. Talk about that. That written commitment.
Yeah, I love that. Man, I love Koski. That was unbelievable, dude. You guys just got all that value for free. Believe it or not, when I was first running my agency, I went out of my way and seeked Koski. I was like, dude, I will pay you money every single week, every month, just like get on and train with my team and kind of be that president of sales role with us for a little while. Because the one thing that I saw from Ryan that I didn't see from everybody else, but I knew Koski had it. I was like, dude, this dude's really honest with himself. when he's really honest and self-aware with himself, he can be honest with others. And that's why you see him going from not only being a top producer to now having one of the largest agencies, right? I think a lot of people can produce, not a lot of people can produce and then run and scale an agency because they don't have the self-awareness. I wouldn't say not a lot of people can do it. Not a lot of people are willing to have the self-awareness to face themselves in order to do it. And that's one thing that Koske's always had. And then one thing that Koske brought when I had a first conversation with them was a formula. And I was like, okay, this guy has a formula. What he just gave you for those metrics of tracking that as a formula for success. And I was like, I could implement that formula for success. So when we all get excited and we're writing down our goals, we're thinking about our goals. I'm not going to get into the woo-woo of writing it down in the present tense and how important that is versus saying, hey, I want to earn $500,000 and saying, I'm so grateful that I earned $500,000. Yes, that matters to get you in the emotional state. But what I've realized is that most people get interested, not committed to hitting their goal. And when, the reason you're not committed is because there's no repercussions and there's no non-negotiables. And it's like, if I want to make $500,000 and then I'm, in February and I'm not doing the activities that I need to, I'm not following the formula Ryan just gave me, that's okay because I don't have any accountability. So I think number one this year is get uncomfortable. Like not only write down your goals, but one thing that I urge everybody to do is actually have a contract with yourself where you sign that contract. It's like, hey, here's the non-negotiables. Ryan decided, he's like, I'm going to go to the gym this year, dude. He's like, I am not going to allow the excuses of the 20-minute drive. He's like, I'm going to spend the money, invest the money. So write down the goal, sign it, commitment. What are your commitments? What are your non-negotiables? Like actually put a contract in with yourself because I don't know how many people here are married. If you get divorced and there's a contract, your wife or husband's going to take 50% of your net worth. That's just how it's going to go down. If you're in a business deal and you have a contract and you don't honor your contract, you're going to lose out on that deal, right? So it's the same thing in your own life, right? We are in business with ourselves. Like we set up our own LLCs, but there's no contract. Every single business that I've ever been in since the age 20, I was in a different level of contracts. I had partners. So we said, hey, you have to hold up your end of the bargain to this business or else you won't have that piece of the business. A lot of you guys have 100% of your business and there's no contract or negotiation with anybody. So there's no accountability because it's just you versus you. So that's a thing you could do. A second thing that I like to do is I like to film a video where I'm talking about my goals, talking about my non-negotiables. So I can go back and I can see the state that I was in. I'm like, all right, let me see the excitement that I was in because that is going to eventually fade away. And it's going to be the disciplines and the formulas that Ryan talked about that hold you accountable. But oftentimes I would just go back to that video and I'd watch it. And I now have a video every year for the last 10 years of me talking about my goals. And I'm like, look at that little pipsqueak with no facial hair. I'm like, I'm gonna be a millionaire. It's like, well, it didn't happen at that age, but at least I get to go back and see that and see the progress. I'm like, dude, am I letting that kid down? And in certain ways, I'm like, crap, I am. I'm like, I need to be more accountable. And so that's where I think everybody here needs partners, like whether that be your significant other, whether that be your sibling, whether that be your friend, whether that be the person sitting in the office next to you and you guys are both brand new. It's like find that accountability buddy and go out of your way to reach out to them and like Paul talks about, don't just think about your goals and write them down. Like confess those goals to other people and don't be scared. I think a lot of people are scared of that spotlight because now they have to be held accountable by other people, and most people don't want that. And the one thing I love about Ryan is he has these standards. I remember we were getting on Zoom and he'd be like, yeah, and he would get upset. And I'd be like, oh, all right, Ryan's not, you don't mess with Ryan now. He's like, put your cameras on, guys. He's like, don't show up to my training and have your camera off. And I was like, I mean, people could be driving, whatever. And Ryan's like, dude, it's 30 minutes a day to show up with the camera on, just do it. Like, that's it. It's not that difficult. And I'm like, it's really not that difficult. And then he set that standard and then people had their cameras on every week because they didn't want to get called out because that's accountability, right? And I think people are afraid of that. So, if you had really strict parents growing up, you were blessed. If you didn't, that's okay. But you should be that person to yourself. So that's what I would say to that. And yeah, Ryan, that was a fantastic training, dude. This is exactly what I think I need to hear. Everybody needed to hear for analyzing the year and gearing up for a big one.
I love it. So good, so good. I mean, I agree. This was a master class with like really planning for 2026 because guys, this is the foundation. It really is a foundation to build something great. Yes, you can get better on the phones. Yes, you can, get better at your recruiting. And yes, you should. But without this, it's going to fall by the wayside, right? It's going to be, good, well-intended seeds that don't ever take any kind of root. Like this is the fertile ground right here. Koski, so as we wrap up, everybody's, let's just say that we got the people that they're dialed on this. Like, okay, I got it. They're going to spend some time reflecting, planning, strategizing. But still, at the end of the year, I believe the ones that will and the ones that won't, and I believe that everybody on here, you have two different yous. The you that could and the you the you that won't, right? Like there's two different ones. I believe like having a big bag of reasons that keeps them moving and pushing while they go through that painful process before progress starts to show up, because progress really will invigorate you, right? Like, okay, now I start seeing some evidence like this is working. Kosky's not full of crap. Like I can reverse engineer this. Like I think he's right. Like until you get to that point, the pain, if it becomes so loud, you kind of give into it. Having a healthy bag of reasons is essential. How does somebody give them some advice on how they cannot just say, "Oh, I'm doing this for my family," right?
Yeah.
Like I'm doing but like have specific, well thought out, like a bag of reasons of why they're doing this. Like kind of talk about how they can formulate those as we wrap up the next couple minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say that ever since I graduated, I didn't graduate college, I dropped out. But ever since I dropped out of college, even when I was in college, um, I started getting into sales quick. So I would say like I am a salesperson. Like that's what I've done, for the last decade of my life. And so I kind of liken everything to the sales process is honestly what I like in everything too. And the dude, I'm not gonna lie, I literally started going somewhere and I lost the train of thought that I had. Paul, re-ask your question. It'll help me remember what.
Yeah, like so your why, the reasons,
Oh
bag of
yeah, the
reasons why
why.
you're doing this. Yeah.
Right, my bad. Sorry. Let me write that down so I don't remember. So I don't forget. All right, cool. So when I'm selling, if I want to close Paul, is it enough for me to say to you, Paul, why do you want mortgage protection? And you say to pay off my house. Is that a sufficient why for you to spend two, three, $400 a month? No, because if like logically, if it doesn't make sense, you're gonna be like, no, I So a lot of you guys on this call, you don't make a lot of money. Look back at the last year, the last 6 months, the last week. Do your actions back up the fact that you're money motivated? Absolutely not. Bro, if we were money motivated, not a single one of us would miss. We would all be working all day, every single day. We wouldn't do anything else. So money does not motivate you. Okay. What does motivate you is why do you want money? So whenever you're building a why with a client, you're trying to go 7 layers deep on that why. Okay, you want to pay off the home. Who are we paying it off for? Your spouse. Why do you want to pay it off for your spouse? Because I love her. Well, I mean, a lot of people love their spouse. Not everybody wants to spend $300-400 a month, Paul. Like, why is it worth that? Because she's took care of everything. She took care of the kids. She built this, she helped make this beautiful home. I want to make sure when I leave that I'm giving back to her. Boom. Now I got a good why, a few layers deep, right? So ask yourself, why do you want to make money? Why do you want freedom? You want to take care of your family. Why? Why do you want to help retire your parents? Why? Why? Get down to why. And what you're going to discover is typically there's something you're running away from. There's something you're scared of. There's a fear that you have. There's something that you experienced maybe in childhood that you never want to experience again, or maybe it was in your adult life or growing up. And you've got to identify that. And you've got to know what it is, what am I running towards or what am I running away from? And it's not money and it's not helping family or giving back. It's got to be something deep, because when you get up in the morning and you're not feeling good and the bank account's thin and you don't want to buy leads, making money is not going to be a good enough reason to get out of bed. It's just not. And if it was, again, every single one of us in here would be the absolute best salesperson of all time. But none of us are, right? So I know that that's not it. And so you've got to have something bigger than yourself, something that you're trying to do. In my opinion, I think everybody should be in some way connected to leaving the world in a better place than you found it. Because if you're not trying to do that, then like God designed us with that purpose in mind, where our job, he put like when God designed man, he put us in a garden and he said, tend to this garden. Like our job was to make that better. That's literally our entire purpose in life. And the problem, Paul, is nowadays we live in a society where if you don't work, you're going to eat. Your family's going to eat. You guys are going to be okay. Somebody's going to take care of you versus 150 years ago. Brother, if you weren't out there like killing it, your family was going to die. And we don't have that innate motivation. We don't have that innate satisfaction from our work. Like I go out, I till, I plant the seeds, I do whatever farmers do. I have no clue what farmers do. I reap the harvest, I feed my family. We don't have that, okay? But we don't have that directly through our work. So you got to realize the work's not giving you that. So you've got to find, what am I searching for, identify it and kill it, because it's not that obvious. And if you don't have that, then yeah, it's going to be difficult for you to push through difficulty. One thing you need to plan on in your life is adversity. So many people make plans and then they freak out when things don't go according to the plan. Dude, I grew up playing sports. We would always draw up plays, right? And quite often we would try to execute a play, but as I'm making my cut right to try to get open for a pass, the cornerback cuts me off. And cool, you can't, now we're not going to throw to the first option, we're going to throw to the second option. And you've got to be able to adapt. And so understand, guys, that you're going to start executing some of the plans that we talked about here. Something's going to go wrong. Something going wrong doesn't mean you're going wrong. That's fine. That's good. Plan on something going wrong. And if your why is big enough, then when something goes wrong, you're going to be okay. But if you have a shallow, maybe materialistic, a really low level quote why, because I wouldn't even call it a why, then you are going to run away and you are going to quit and you actually are going to experience failure if your why isn't big enough. And again, when I'm with a client, I'm not showing numbers until I've got a good, deep emotional reason why Paul wants to take care of his family, why that's important to him, and why that's more important to him than it is other people, because only 10-15% of Americans are insured with life insurance or mortgage protection, Paul. So why do you want to be one of those 10? Like, what is it that's going on here? But you've got to have the same thing in your personal life, because this is not an easy job, right? It's not easy to do. It's just not. I think most of us understand that. And if you don't have a deep why, it's not going to be enough to keep you going when things get difficult. And I can promise you, if there's one thing that I can guarantee you, is things will get difficult for you.
100%, man. So good, man. This has been one of my favorite, calls that I think for me going back and going through it would provide fruit. I think a lot on here would agree to that. And so it's kind of like when a value exceeds price, people buy. Well, when your why exceeds the sacrifice, you'll pay it. If your why is so big and you want to go after it, then the pain doesn't seem like pain. It seems like purpose that's just going to produce you towards that calling that you've got, that why that you're trying to satisfy. And so good, guys. I hope this provided great value to you. Guys, let's finish the year strong. Your next level you deserves it. You start casting the votes for the person that you want to become that's going to hit that goal. Man, the greater the votes, the more the votes casted, the more that person's going to show up, and that's going to be the one that's going to be there in 2026. They need to be there in 2026. And so get your convention ticket. Do the things that the next level you do, the thing that the President's Circle member would do. Do the thing that $1 million base shop would do. Do that thing now and watch as you do it. It'll eventually show up and it'll be the life that you're living. And so, Koske, thank you so much, man. This has been so good, guys. Make it an unbelievable week. Have a happy new year. Let's finish strong so we can begin strong. I love being in business with you guys. This is really a privilege of my life. And so let's go crush it and let's finish strong. Appreciate you, Ryan.